cantos to be named after the 10 subjects. Firstly, there are 12 cantos and 10 subjects. And secondly, point that is made is that all the topics are spoken of in all the cantos. So if you look at it from a more scrutinizing perspective, each canto will actually speak about all the 10 topics, but there is a predominance of some topic and some cantos, right? So that's how there is some validity in naming the cantos after the topics, but it's mostly notional because Prabhupada and Jiva Goswami both make the same point that the Lord speaks about all the topics and all the cantos. So the sixth canto, which essentially is the last canto in the Bhakti Vaibhava, has 19 chapters. And some symmetry over here because the first canto also has 19 chapters. And so we started with 19, we end with 19. It has 851 verses total, about the size, a little bigger than Bhagavad Gita. And if you were to look at the flow in the canto as a whole, amongst the 19 chapters, the first 3 chapters talk about Ajmer. And really speaking, so all of you are familiar with Ajmer's pastime. Really speaking, it's the Lord's excuse me, it's the Lord's protection through his holy name. Yeah, the most accessible and potent form of protection. Then the subsequent creations, the subsequent chapters talk about the lineage of Daksha. So if you remember in the 4th canto, it was mostly the lineage of Swayambhavu Manu. And where did it end? From all the way from Swayambhavu Manu, it ended with the 10 prachetas. Right? So Swayambhavu Manu is one of his, or even before Swayambhavu, there's Brahma, there's Daksha, Swayambhavu Manu, and Daksha is killed. And then there's the whole lineage that comes to Dhruva Maharaj, comes to through Prithu Maharaj, comes to Maharaj Prachanabari, and then the 10 prachetas. So where does the 4th canto end? With the 10 prachetas marrying Marisha. And who do they have as the son? Daksha. So this is Daksha 2. Daksha 1 was killed. So he was beheaded by Lord Shiva. He got a goat's head, completed a sacrifice, and gave up his life. And then he waited. And then when the time was right, he took birth again as the son of the 10 prachetas in Marisha. And so the 6th canto now resumes with the lineage of Daksha. Right? So chapters 4, 5, and 6 will talk about Daksha 2, basically. Now in this whole time, the Manus have changed. So the first Daksha came during the time of Swayambhavu Manu, and Daksha 2 comes during the time of I believe during the 6th Manu. I'm not 100% sure, but several Manus later on. Daksha 2 comes. Then from Daksha comes Vishwarupa. So chapters 7, 8, and 9 talk about Vishwarupa. And Vishwarupa, as we know, one of the very powerful Brahmanas. And that sets the stage for chapters 9 to 13, which is the Vritasur pastime. And the Vritasur pastime is actually one of the most prominent pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So when Srimad Bhagavatam is discussed, then often the identifying characteristic of the Bhagavatam is that Puran in which the pastime of Vritasur is discussed. And Vritasur pastime is so important that it is discussed in almost all the Puranas. So it's considered to be fairly significant. And we can see it by the fact that there is a total of 5 chapters that are devoted to Vritasur. There is only one pastime in the Bhagavatam that extends longer, and that is the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj and Narsingadev. That's the only pastime that extends longer. After that is the Vritasur pastime. Now, chapters 14 to 17 talk about Chitraketu, which is essentially Vritasur in the previous life. So in a way, if we combine the two, because they're both the same personalities, then chapters 9 to 17, which is 9 chapters, talk about Vritasur, who he was in his previous life, who was he in the life before being Chitraketu, how did he become Vritasur. So, like I said, one of the most discussed, fascinating, instructive pastimes. The pastime is analyzed from many perspectives, and some of the Puranas, it appears more from the perspective of Indra. That Indra is the king of the Devas, fighting with this really powerful demon by the name of Vritasur. As part of their pastime, the famous Narayan Kavach appears. Bhagavatam is unique in a way because it is one of the only Purans that talk about the pastime from the perspective of Vritasur. It's also unique because it is one of the only Purans that glorifies Vritasur. Right? If you see, even though Vritasur is presented as a far-out demon, doing all the things that a regular demon does, but when you read the conversation, the conduct, then the devotees, they naturally gravitate towards Vritasur. Despite the fact he's a demon, he's eating the devas, doing all the things, but his realizations are so advanced. And at the end of it, one questions, who did Krishna actually favor? Externally, he's favoring Indra, but actually speaking, who did he actually favor? Vritasur goes back to Godhead. Indra is left to continue with his long life in the material universe, right? And then the last 2 chapters is the interaction between Diti and Indra. So if you look at the flow in the 6th canto, the first 3 chapters kind of stand out on their own. They're exclusively meant to glorify the holy name through the pastime of Ajmer, right? And then the 4th, 5th, and 6th chapters, they form the basis of what will appear later on. So we see the appearance of Daksha, we see Daksha's marriage, Daksha's sons being converted to brahmachari with Narad Muni, Daksha cursing Narad Muni, setting the basis, right? Now from chapter 7 to 19, one character that is common is Indra. So when we see Vishwaroop, who is Vishwaroop? The whole pastime of Vishwaroop is because of Indra. That he offends Brahaspati, then Vishwaroop becomes his guru, and Indra then kills Vishwarupa, and then he's contaminated by Brahmahatya. So there is Indra over there, right? Then the whole Vritasur pastime has Indra fighting with Vritasur on behalf of the Devas, and then 18, 19 again has Indra. Diti does the vow to have a son that can kill Indra, and then Indra is serving. So he's one of the unifying characters, but nevertheless, he's a secondary character, right? He's almost like enabling the main pastimes to be paid, right? So Indra appears, and then against Vishwarupa, and then we get the message about the importance of or the dangers of Guru Apra. Indra comes in the context of Vritasur, and then we understand the glories of devotional service. Indra comes in context with Diti, and then we understand the importance of performing um, um, even unknowingly devotional service, because Diti followed the Vrata, even though she was doing it for a bad purpose. But the fact that she followed it, Indra could not kill her, kill the Maruts. Okay, so we now have a general understanding of the flow in the sixth canto. Let's start with the first chapter, right? So the first chapter, it has 68 verses. It's the second longest chapter in the sixth canto, and the flow of the chapter is that it opens up with Parikshit Maharaj summarizing whatever he has heard so far, and inquires further. Then Sukhdev Goswami, he tests Parikshit Maharaj, and then following that he speaks further. Then we have from verses 20 to 29, Ajamil's chanting of the holy name at the time of death. From verses 30 to 55, this is one of the often quoted conversation between the Yamadutas and Vishnu Dutas as Ajamil is dying. And then there is the recap from 56 to 68. There is the fall down of Ajamil, and that will continue into the next two chapters. Okay, let me pause here and see if you have any questions on the sixth canto.
How long will it take, Prabhu, to complete?
So it's about 800 and some verses. So conservatively, I would say about a year. But if we move a little quicker, then 6 months. So it kind of depends on you. If you go with the same, I guess with the same level of scrutiny, then we typically do about 20 verses every week, right? So that gets us to about 40 some weeks. And if you throw in a little bit of breaks, it gets us to a year. If I summarize the verses and move a little quicker, then I feel that I can do it in 6 months. And it's a good question, Achyuta. Maybe it's an opportunity for me to get some feedback from you. What do you think?
I would say probably overview will be better.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Yes, I understand. Others?
The same pace should be better through what we have done through. We should continue with the same approach. Even if it takes, we'll try to see. Now we have opened up this Thursday, right? If you are okay, but we can have twice a week, but only on certain occasions. There are days like we will be skipping the classes, like next 2 weeks we'll not be having.
Okay.
So we can cover it up.
Okay.
So that we can.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Me too, I'm okay going with the same pace.
Same pace? Okay.
Yes.
Same pace, Prabhuji. We don't get the opportunity to go this deep commonly. So we would like to hear with the same depth how you are presenting and teaching us.
Okay. Yeah. Sarang Prabhu, what do you think?
I think I will go with a majority. For me, time is not the problem. I like to hear, especially some realization we will never get. And to be honest with you, reading on our own also, when we read, if we don't get the same understanding, it's okay for me.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. What are your thoughts, Paramatma Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Krishna. Yeah, I think the same pace. It's okay. I'm okay, with whatever,
Okay.
because I look forward, for this on Monday night, and even if it has to go over, let's say twice a week, I don't have a problem. I'm free on both days, and I look forward, to these classes. So.
Okay, thank you. So maybe what we'll do is we'll continue with the same pace, but we'll try to make up for any classes that we missed, like Prem Kishore Prabhu is saying. So I know in the past we have taken gaps, sometimes because of my schedule, sometimes because of circumstances. I think we'll try and maintain on an average at least one class a week, whether it means doubling up and in certain weeks. Also, as I discussed last time, that I did when we reconvene, I do want to do. It's probably going to be an 8-week seminar on Bhagavad cosmology, but we'll not take our Bhagavatam slot. So we will do it in addition to our Bhagavatam. That way we maintain the momentum. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the first verse, first chapter, 6th canto. Sri Parikshit Uvacha Nivritti Marga Kathitta Ado Bhagavata Yata Karma Yoga Phala Bhadena Brahmana Yad Asamshataha. Maharaj Parikshit said, O my Lord, O Sukadev Goswami, you have already described in the second canto the path of liberation, Nivritti Marga. By following that path, one is certainly elevated gradually to the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, from which one is promoted to the spiritual world along with Lord Brahma. Thus, one's repetition of birth and death in the material world ceases. So the first 6 verses is Parishit Maharaj summarizing what he has heard and using that as a basis for further inquiries. Right? So in Canto 5, there was the description of the dynasties. There was a long description. This is the son of this. In the first 15 chapters, right? That is Thanam. And then there is also Visarga in the later chapters. The whole description of the Vedic cosmology part of it. That is all part of Visarga. In this canto, the focus is Poshan, which is the Lord's protection, and the characters that appear in this canto, they have one thing that is kind of unique to them and across all of them. They are all devotees who have fall downs and experience the protection of Krishna. So the sweetest form of protection is when it is extended to one who least deserves it. Because if I am a fully practicing devotee, then protection is my right. Like Brahma says, right, in Tattenu Kampam Sumikshamano, right, that for one who is constantly surrendering to Krishna, then liberation becomes his birthright. So if I was fully practicing, then it's my right to expect protection. When is it not my right to expect protection? When I am not practicing fully. That's when the protection of the Lord is the sweetest. So we see over here, there are 4 characters. all of them have the characteristic of being devotees who fell. So we have Ajamil, who was a devotee, he fell to lust. We have Indra, who is obviously a devotee, and he falls to Aprad, Vaishnava Aprad, more specifically Guru Aprad. So we see he offends Brahaspati and Vishwarupa, right? And then we see Krishna's protection coming in various ways, despite his offenses. Then we see Chitraketu. Chitraketu, his offense is again Vaishnava Aprad. And he criticizes Lord Shiva on a platform of being unduly familiar with him. Right? And then we see again Krishna's protection. And then we see in the last two chapters, Diti and Indra. Both of them are fall downs. Diti has a fall down because she's consumed in the mode of ignorance by the desire to take revenge. Indra has the fall down because in a desire to preserve himself, he's willing to commit infanticide or actually feticide. He doesn't even wait for them to be born. He's willing to kill the unborn children of Diti, but then both of them are protected, right? So we see this very, very sweet protection of the Lord extending to devotees. That verse that Krishna says, "Api che sudarachara bhajante mam ananya bhag." So that completely describes all these people. That they were devotees, they fell down, but sadhureva manyante. That Krishna still considers them to be his protection, to be his devotees, and different flavors of fall down. Ajamil completely gave up chanting. Chitraketu never gave up chanting, right? And Indra and Diti, they were always mixed devotees. So different cadre of devotees, right? And we see that Krishna's sweetness is that doesn't have to be a pure devotee. So we can't, the point you're making is not that I protect only the fall down of pure devotees. I also protect the fall down of mixed devotees. So it's one of the chapters that is very dear to devotees, practicing devotees like us, not because we want to take shelter of it and say that, we'll do what Ajamil did and we'll be protected, but even without trying to do anything, we are constantly having fall downs. We don't have to try. I think once somebody asked Radhanath Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj that if Krishna's protection is especially extended to devotees who fall down, then should we fall down to get Krishna's protection? And Maharaj said, you don't have to try. So the point he was making is that, just by our nature, we are constantly falling down. So what does Parikshit Maharaj say in this verse? He says that we have already discussed the path of liberation, which is the Nivritti mark, and he wants to now hear what is more, right? So he's first reflecting on what he has heard to establish his understanding. That am I correct in understanding what I've heard? And then based on that, in the 6th verse, he will ask his question. So Prabhupada in the purport, in the translation, when Parikshit Maharaj says, you have already described, then Prabhupada interpolates in the 2nd canto, right? And specifically, there are, in the 2nd chapter of the 2nd canto, verse 24. And in the 3rd canto, chapter 32, verses 5, 6, and 7. So these verses specifically deal with Nivritti mark, but essentially the surrounding verses also deal with Nivritti mark. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, according to the opinion of the Acharyas, the word Krama Yoga Phalabdena indicates that by first performing karma and then Jnana Yoga, and finally coming to the platform of Bhakti Yoga, one can be liberated. At Krama means gradually. Bhakti Yoga, however, is so powerful that it does not depend on karma or Jnana Yoga. Bhakti Yoga itself is so powerful that even an impious man with no assets in karma or an illiterate with no asset in Jnana can undoubtedly be elevated to the spiritual world, even if he simply adheres to Bhakti Yoga. Right, so Prabhupada is giving us a peek into what the canto will speak about. Right? That those who are not qualified in either karma or jnana, or they may be qualified, regardless, they can attain the platform of bhakti. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that by the process of Bhakti Yoga, one undoubtedly goes back to Godhead, back home to the spiritual world. Yogis, however, instead of going directly to the spiritual world, sometimes want to see other planetary systems. Right? So this is essentially the Nivritti mark. So, so those of you who have read Brihad Bhagavatamrita, you see the Gopakumar, that even though he was a pure devotee, he was chanting, he had Krishna as a spiritual master, but he still had the desires to experience the material world. So he, by and by, he goes to Svargaloka, goes to Brahmalok, goes to various planetary system, Vaikuntha, because even though he was liberated, he still had those desires. So similarly, there are jivas who, by virtue of the devotional service, have qualified to go back to spiritual world, but they still have desires to experience the material world, specifically the higher planets. So they take birth in higher planets all the way till Brahmaloka, and they live for as long as Brahma does. At the end of Brahma's life, Brahma goes back to Godhead, and along with Brahma, they also go back to Godhead. So in the Kurma Puran, it is stated that those who are on Brahmaloka with exalted status at the time of dissolution go directly to the supreme abode along with Lord Brahma. Right? So in Brahmaloka, they live for a long time. They experience the material world from a very elevated platform. And because of the force of devotional service in the past, they're already destined to go back to the spiritual world. So when Brahma goes back, they also go back along with Brahma. So the previous verse talked about Nivritti mark. Now in the next verse, Maharaj Parishit will talk about the Pravritti mark. So Pravritti Lakshanascha Traigunya Vishaya Mune Yosavalin Praktater Gunasarga Punaha Punaha. O great sage Sukadev Goswami, unless the living entity is freed from the infection of the material modes of nature, he receives different types of bodies in which to enjoy or suffer. And according to the body, he is understood to have various inclinations. By following these inclinations, he traverses the path called Pravritti Marg, by which one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, as you have already described. And Prabhupada says in the third canto. Right? So second canto was Nivritti Marg, and the third canto is Pravritti Marg. So Prabhupada writes that all living entities are rotating through the universe, sometimes going to the higher, sometimes to the lower planets. That is the material disease. That is known as Pravritti Marg. When one becomes intelligent, it takes to Nivritti Marg, the path of liberation. And thus, instead of rotating within this material world, it turns home back to Godhead. So specifically, Pravritti Marg is described in 332.16. where it is said that persons who are too addicted to this material world execute their prescribed duties very nicely and with great faith. They daily perform all such prescribed duties with attachment to the fruitive results. And Prabhupada gives quotes words from 925, the Yanti Deva Vrata Devan Pitran Yanti Pitradava, where Krishna says that the worshippers of the demigods go to the planet of demigods. So these are all Pravritti Marg. Now, the difference between Nivritti and Pravritti is, so even the Nivritti Marg, they have some desire to enjoy the material world, and so does Pravritti Marg. The difference is that for those on the Pravritti Marg, the enjoyment is all in all. They don't know anything beyond it. That's their goal. For those on the Nivritti Marg, the enjoyment is something on the side. Right? So it's like, you know, you have to go to a destination, but you take the scenic route. So the GPS is programmed with the destination. And you're qualified to drive to the destination, but you decide to take the scenic route. Right? Pravritti Marg is, they do have no desire to go to the destination. They're simply lost in the scenic route. So, to do a quick recap, Sukdev Goswami, and I'm extending it a little bit over here from what Parikshit Maharaj has said. I'll also share this table with Prem Kishore Prabhu. So Prabhupada, Sukdev Goswami so far has spoken about Nivritti Marg, which is the gradual elevation to Brahmaloka, and then finally liberation, specifically described in the second canto, first two chapters. He talked about Pravritti Marg, which is the Traigunya Vishaya, the three modes of material nature, elevation to the heavenly planets, specifically defined in 32 chapter of third canto. Then he described the third path of those who are following neither Pravritti nor Nivritti, which is those who are sinful. And that he describes in the fifth canto, chapter 26. Then in addition to that, he describes Visarga, which is, he describes the first mantra presided by Swayambhavu Manu, and that is the subject of the majority of the fourth canto. He describes the dynasties of the first Manu, Utanpad, Priyavarta, Dhruva Maharaj, King Venu, Prithu Maharaj, Pracheta. So the whole dynasty is described in the fourth canto, going into the fifth canto, Maharaj Rishabdev, etc. And then finally, again as part of Visarga, the structure of the universe. So fifth canto, chapters 16 to 26. Right. So when you put all this together, what is Sukdev Goswami talked about? He has described a prison house in great details. That's the material world. That these are the walls of the prison house. These are the ropes by which the prisoners are bound. There is gradations in the prison house. Some people have better conditions, some people have worse conditions. How to get from worse conditions to better conditions. How the whole prison house, every corner of the prison house is occupied by somebody. Then he has talked about who is occupying the prison house by talking about the lineage coming from Swayambhavu Manu and his descendants. And then he has talked about the way to exit the prison house. Right. And so far he has talked about the gradual elevation, that going from completely sinful to pious, going from pious to nishkam, and then cultivating the desire of liberation, and then exiting the prison house. So Sukdev Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj has basically summarized the first 5 cantos in this set of verses. The question now is that you have elaborately described the prison house, its structure, rules, regulations. What is an easy way to exit it? Right. So that is going to be the focus of the 6th canto. One way to exit it has already been described, which is the Nivritti Marg. King Parikshit Maharaj is not satisfied with it. So his focus now is that what is an easy way to exit it. Okay, verse 3. Adharma lakshanana narakaschanuvernitah manvantrascha vyakhyata adaya swayam bhavuyatah. You have also described at the end of the 5th canto the varieties of hellish life that result from impious activities. And you have described in the 4th canto the first manvantra, which was presided over by Swayambhavu Manu, the son of Lord Brahma. So the first half of the verse talks about the result of Pravritti Marg. Right? So in the Pravritti Marg, there is the higher and lower destinations. And Parikshit Maharaj here talks about the lower destinations. Because Pravritti Marg is fallible, difficult to execute Karmakand properly. So that's why his focus is on the 26th chapter, where the 28 kinds of hells are there. And Prabhupada notes that because of the compassionate nature of Parikshit Maharaj, so Parikshit Maharaj himself is liberated. He doesn't have to worry about himself. But because of his compassionate nature, for the benefits of others like us, he's now inquiring about what is an easy way to exit this very complicated prison that is built by Krishna in the form of the material world, right? And as I mentioned, Parikshit Maharaj is also summarizing all he has heard to encourage to the Guru. So one of the duties of the disciple is to reflect to the Guru that what is my understanding. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was preaching to Mahaprabhu, then for 7 days he was talking and Mahaprabhu was completely non-responsive. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gets a little upset. Think, at least tell me if you're not understanding, let me know, then I will try and explain it further. You're just sitting like that. And Mahaprabhu, of course, had a different agenda. But here Parikshit Maharaj is playing the role of an ideal disciple. He's reflecting back to his Guru to first validate his understanding and also to assure to his Guru that, yes, I have been hearing and this is what I've understood so far. Okay, verses 4 and 5. Priyavartutapnador vamshastaccharitani cha dvipavarsha samudradi nadyudyana vanaspatin dharamandala samsthana bhagalakshanmanatah jyotisham vivaranam cha yatedama srajat vibhuhu. My dear Lord, you have described the dynasties and characteristics of King Priyavarta and King Uttanapad. The Supreme Personality of Godhead created this material world with various universes, planetary systems, planets and stars, with varied lands, seas, oceans, mountains, rivers, gardens, and trees, all with different characteristics. These are divided among this planet Earth, the luminaries in the sky, and the low planetary system. You have very clearly described these planets and the living entities who live on them. Right? So in the previous verse, Parikshit Maharaj had begun to summarize the passage of time. Right? So he says that you have described in the first canto the first Manu, Swayambhavu Manu. In this verse, he continues with that lineage. So Swayambhavu Manu, as you know, had 2 sons. One is Maharaj Uttanapad, and the second is Priyavarta. The 4th canto was all about the descendants of Uttanpad. The fifth canto is Priyavrta, how he divided the universe into various dvipas, gave it to his sons, how his various sons became Manus. So the lineage of Manu and the passage of time is described. Also, Parishit Maharaj is talking about the variegatedness of the universe. So, in a way, that is what makes this universe so dangerous. That there is something for everyone. If somebody wants to experience gross material sense gratification, there is the Bilva Swarga for them. Somebody wants to piously enjoy, there is Swarga. If somebody is inclined for sinful activities, there is the hellish planets. Somebody is in the mixed mode. So there's something for everybody. So that's what makes this universe, material universe, so difficult to extricate. Prabhupada in the purport writes that atheists try to conceal the hand of God, which is present in every creation. But they cannot explain how all these creations could come into existence without a competent intelligence and almighty power behind them. Simply to imagine or speculate is a waste of time. And so Srila Prabhupada talks about the other aspect of this narrative, that one cannot understand the mysteries of the universe without inquiring from a devotee in the association of devotees. That's why he starts off by saying atheists try to conceal. So the first thing the atheists do is that they deny the existence of God, and then they try to explain the workings of the universe. And Prabhupada said this is simply a waste of time. Verse 6, Aduneya mahabhaga yathev naraka naraha nanugrayat anatneyat tanme vyakhayatu marasi. O greatly fortunate and opulent Sukadeva Goswami, now kindly tell me how human beings may be saved from having to enter hellish conditions in which they suffer terrible pains. So now that Sukadev, Parishit Maharaj has established to Sukadev Goswami his own understanding of what has been explained so far, he puts his question. So this indicates that in the Bhagavatam, this is a turning point. That up till the fifth canto, there is a description of Sarga, Visarga, and Sthanam, primary creation, secondary creation, and the structure of the universe. Now there is a turning point over here where the focus now is on the protection of the Lord for his devotees. So what is weighing heavily on the mind of Parishit Maharaj is the previous chapter, where Sukadeva Goswami speaks about the 28 hells. And the criteria by which one is sent to the hell is fairly, so a lot of them are fairly, what's the right word? They're low thresholds. So some of them are high thresholds, like if one kills somebody, one, so some of them are like gross sins. But there are many who are, or you would also say they are like slight deviations from normal living conditions. Like one of the hell is meant for people who do not welcome guests in their house. One of the hell is for people who misuse the power and authority. And one of the hell is for people who do not sufficiently give in charity. Right? So these are what you would say are not outright sins, But nevertheless, there are hells that are there for them. So the general message that is coming through is that for a person who is practicing karma kanda, the entry into one of these 28 hells is almost assured. Unless that person is very, very pakka, which in the age of Kali is impossible, and even in earlier ages it was impossible, one can almost be certain that one of those 28 hells or more than one of those 28 hells is waiting for them. So that is why Sukadeva Goswami is talking about. He is not talking about grossly sinful people, right? Sometimes we look at this question and we say, okay, not really meant for us. People who are killing, people who are plundering, poisoning, etc. No, there are hellish planets waiting for even what we consider as much much lower threshold crimes. So Parikshit Maharaj is therefore inquiring about, if you rephrase the question, he's saying that based on what I have heard, almost everyone in this material world is going to go to hell. How can they avoid the terrible pains in that hell, right? So that's the that's the question that he's asking. And Srila Prabhupada, he appreciates the mood of Parikshit Maharaj. Right? So as a devotee, Prabhupada says that he is paradukha dukhi. He has no personal troubles, but he's unhappy to see others in trouble. Now, from one perspective, Parikshit Maharaj is at this point maybe 3 to 4 days to live. So you would say he has a lot of personal troubles, but as a devotee, he has no personal trouble. Whether living or not living doesn't matter to him. He knows that he's in the association of devotees. He will die in the association of devotees. He comes from a lineage of devotees. Krishna has protected him from the time of birth. So he knows nothing for him to worry about. But he's worried about the others. And so Prabhupada appreciates this mood, that he's not worried about his own imminent death. Even at that time, he's worried about the sufferings of others. How glorious can Vaishnavas be? So in one of his lectures, Radhika Raman Prabhu says that Vaishnava compassion has 3 qualities. That it is deep, it is spontaneous, and it is complete. Right? So deep in the sense that it's not superficial. Many times, especially everywhere, I guess, but here in this country, I noticed that it's almost like if you're in some trouble, they'll immediately say, "Are you okay?" And it's a banal question. It doesn't know. So everybody expects you to respond by saying that yes, I'm okay. I mean, if you say that I'm not okay, then there's no understanding on how to follow up on that. Right? You're sitting on a chair, you slip and fall. Everybody will turn to you and say, "Are you okay?" And now you fell, obviously, there's some amount of pain, but they don't really care about the response. They're just like, it's superficial. Then spontaneous is that it is not pre-orchestrated compassion. So it is not orchestrated for result. That let me show my compassion, and because of that, I will get glorification. Or let me show my compassion, because of that, I will get reciprocation. It's a different. So when there is premeditation, there is some kind of desire for the outcome of it. And even though the compassion may be deep, but if it is premeditated, then it mitigates the effectiveness of it. Because when the reciprocation is lacking, then the compassion will cease to exist. And the third is that it should be complete, which means that Vaishnava is not just concerned about the body. Like Prabhupada gives the example of trying to protect the coat of a drowning person or blow on the boil. So partial, superficial compassion, like partial compassion. that I can give you this. No, it does not mean that Vaishnava ignores that aspect, but complete is that it is looked in the complete picture. That you're not just the body, but there is something else that you are, and the compassion extends not just to the body, but the soul. So we see Parishad Maharaj exhibiting these three qualities of compassion: deep, spontaneous, and being complete. Okay, so let me do one more verse and then we'll stop for discussion. Verse 7. Sri Sukha Vacha Nachediva Pichutam Yatham Saha Kritasya Kuryan Manoktapanibi Dhruvam Savai Pretaya Narakanupaiti Ye Kirtita Me Bhavatastigmayatanaha. Sukadeva Goswami replied, My dear king, if before one's next death, whatever impious acts one has performed in this life with his mind, words, and body are not counteracted through proper atonement, according to the description of the Manu Samhita and other Dharma Shastras, one will certainly enter the hellish planets after death and undergo terrible suffering, as I have previously described to you. So in 13 verses, 7 to 19, Sukadeva Goswami tests Parikshit Maharaj as a way to establish ultimately bhakti. But right now, these are testing verses. So Sukadeva Goswami first gives the process of atonement on the mode of karma. So this is Karma Kand. In 2 verses, he will give the process of atonement. So essentially, he is saying that if one does not perform atonement for the sins committed by body, mind, and words, singly or together, which means for sins, specific sins, or a generally sinful life, he is saying that one will certainly have to suffer terrible pain in hellish planets. So Srila Prabhupada says that Sukadeva Goswami could immediately have spoken about bhakti, but he does not do so to test Parishad Maharaj's intelligence. So this again indicates that the 6th canto is a turning point, because he has spoken so far and now he takes a pause, and both we see the guru and the disciple, so to speak, recognizing that they are at crossroads. So we see Parishad Maharaj summarizing everything he had heard and laying the basis of further inquiries. And we see Sukadeva Goswami testing Parishad Maharaj of his understanding of whatever has been spoken so far. Prabhupada says there are 80 authorized scriptures. One of them is Manu Samhita. There are others that are known as Dharma Shastras, which advise on how to counteract sinful activities by performing other types of activities. Now, this is not the first time Sukadeva Goswami is speaking about it, right? Because Parishad Maharaj himself said that he talked about the Pravriti Marg. So this is essentially Karma Kand. This is Pravriti Marg. So within Pravriti Marg, there is this allowance for correcting the mistakes that you have done. So whether sinful activities are performed by body, mind, or words, using the same body, mind, and words, one can atone for those sinful activities and avoid the repercussions of unknowingly or unknowingly perform sinful activities. Now, Srila Prabhupada, as usual, is impatient to take us to Bhakti. Sukdev Goswami right now is holding back Parishad Maharaj. That, this is how you can avoid going to hellish planets, by prashchit, right? And Prabhupada says that, yes, that is true, but there is Mamchavya Vicharena, Bhakti Yogena Sevata, right? It was Bhagavad Gita 14:26, that when one takes to devotional life, all the reactions to his sinful life immediately stop. So Sukdev Goswami will speak about it later on. Srila Prabhupada is giving us a sneak preview, right? And he quotes the other verse. Prabhupada quotes 1866, right? Mame Vashasi Aham Tum Papebhyo Mokshyami Masucha, right? Prabhupada, where Krishna says that I will free you from all sinful reactions. Now, another point is that this verse, especially as devotees, we should mark this verse because it is also quoted out of context. So there will be those who will say that Bhagavatam actually speaks about the glories of atonement, and they will quote these two verses. Right, just like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that now you do whatever you want to do. In 1871, I think, right? He said, now that you have heard everything I had to say, now you do as you please. And then some people quote that verse that Krishna wants us to do as we please. Or third chapter where Krishna says, second chapter Krishna says that if you consider the body to be like a bag of chemicals that come and go into existence, and then people will say, well, that's what Krishna says, that the body is essentially just chemicals. So for our own understanding, we have to establish that scriptures are not textual, they're contextual. And so a verse in itself does not make a lot of sense. Whenever anybody quotes a verse at you, the first thing you have to ask is that where does this verse appear? Sometimes people will quote verses from scripture that we don't know. In Vishnu Puran this is said, and Devi Puran this is said, right? So even though we may not know, but at least we can use our training to understand that the text itself does not make much sense. The context makes the sense. Who said it, to whom, under what circumstances, what did it lead to, what it was leading from. Okay, let me take a pause over here and see if there is any discussion on what we have spoken so far.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. How to take Ambarish Maharaj, even though he's in different dynasties, but he was from the lower planets.
Which Maharaj?
Ambarish Maharaj, right?
He's not from lower planets.
Not Ambarish Maharaj. Not.
Prahlad Maharaj?
Prahlad Maharaj.
Also, your question is that where was he born in the lower planetary?
Yeah, even though he has the qualities of a
devotee. Yeah. So personalities like Prahlad and Dhruva, etc., they're kind of like Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. When Arjuna is going into illusion, then superficially is going into illusion, but essentially he's an eternal associate of Krishna. So a lot of these personalities, so Prahlad Maharaj, through his life, he demonstrates so many essential tattvas of bhakti, that your birth is not a qualification or disqualification. Then importance of mercy, of Guru. The fact that bhakti is not dependent on one's age. So many lessons that come through Krishna. He makes it happen through Prahlad Maharaj. Then there is also, this is not in the Bhagavatam, of course, there are Puranic stories that talk about the antecedents of Prahlad Maharaj. That essentially a person who was basically sinful in his previous life, but Agyat Sukriti, unknowingly performed some devotional service for Lord Nrsimhadev. And because of the power of the Agyat Sukriti, he was born as a devotee. But because of his prior sinful life, he was born in a demoniac family. Right? So that is a little bit more Puranic understanding. But from the Bhagavad Puran, essentially, it's a demonstration of the potency of bhakti.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. In many places we say that, like even in the translation in this verse 1426, devotion service is so strong that if one is fully surrendered to Krishna, and if one take fully to devotional service, even Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, not Aham, the other verses, they say always that you have to be fully surrendered. But in our condition, we're not there. Me, I'm talking about me, maybe others already. We are not, I am not fully surrendered. And as you earlier said that maybe we're not giving charity fully, maybe we are still doing some, last time we said we are still committing some crime because we're killing like insect and thing and that. I mean, to go to to the hellish planet is the door is open. It doesn't mean that we because we are practicing a little bit we are safe. That's what I was trying to.
And that's the premise of the sixth canto, right? Because all the characters in the sixth canto, now they're much more elevated than us. That's why they find their place in the Bhagavatam. But they're all satisfying the exact condition that you're saying, that they're practicing devotees who have fall downs. And whether it is Ajmil or Vritasur or Indra or Diti, all practicing devotees who have fall down, but still experience the protection of the Lord. So that's the big lesson for us, because it is natural for us to experience this anxiety. What you're saying, that we have still not fully surrendered to Krishna, we are still in the modes, we are committing sinful activities, either knowingly or unknowingly. Right? So, what is there in the future for us? The sixth canto gives us the answer to that, right? And the answer is lots and lots of protection. But the sixth canto will establish this in two ways. One is by enunciating the life of others like us. And the second is by giving us the process to redeem ourselves. And in these two ways, the sixth canto is going to protect us.
Yeah, because sometimes we can get some complacency in the term that, oh, I'm chanting 16 round, but it's not pure round. It's not like fully attentive round. But it's still I'm chanting, I'm initiated, I'm doing second initiation, I can do this, I can do that. And we get a bit complacent that saying that, oh, maybe next birth we will go to Krishna. But while you go through all this, when I go through all this, I say, oh, Krishna, I'm not ready at all. There's a lot of thing to do, lot of improvement need to be done.
Yes, you're right. That's I think what I would say is the more mature realization. While the sixth canto is promising us protection, The mature realization is, let me not take the protection for granted. Because who knows what will happen, right? Who knows? Who knows, we may take birth in heavenly planets and be engrossed in the enjoyment over there. Who knows, we may take birth in the family of Suchinam, Kirtinam, people who are pious and people who are opulent families, and then get absorbed in sense enjoyment over there. So the other aspect of it is, yes, there is protection by Krishna, but then we also know that for those who take the protection for granted, there is the fall down. There's the fall down of Ajamel, there's the fall down of Chitraketu. So that's the other aspect of the sixth canto that warns us about taking this protection for granted. Right? So it gives us both the lessons. One is to expect the protection and not become disheartened. And the second is to not take it for granted and always have that edge that let us try to make this a last birth.
Okay, thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Say that please.
Go ahead,
Please.
Mataji.
Yeah, probably see that, like, I mean, even though Parikshit Maharaj does not have like a lot of time, but still, Shukdev Goswami is basically talking about like this atonement and, all of that. We see that even like with Vyasdev, right? I mean, he didn't directly give, the essence of all the Vedic scriptures. He basically gave a roundabout method first, and when and then basically came to the point. But I mean, why do like, I mean, or at least in this scenario, like why was there a test even though Parikshit didn't really have a lot of time? Why didn't he just directly talk about pure devotional service?
It's a good question, and the understanding we have is that the Bhagavatam is spoken really for our benefit. So as I had noted earlier on, Parikshit Maharaj was always liberated. He was always protected, right? And in the earlier chapters, he's described as a Mahabhagavat. Even before this whole Srimad Bhagavatam conversation is happening. So he's the via media through which Krishna, through the agency of Sukdev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, is giving us the lessons. A lot of what has been spoken in the Bhagavatam, as you were rightly saying, that Sukdev Goswami in 7 days could not have practiced it. All the discussion about the Pravritti Marg, the Nivritti Marg, Astang Yoga, the meditation on the Virat Roop, all that completely useless to Parikshit Maharaj. Yet Parikshit Maharaj is patiently sitting and hearing this all out because he wants to get us to this point, to the 6th canto, where after we have been exposed to and thoroughly convinced about the shortcomings of all these paths, that we are now will be speaking about the path of pure devotion. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we see Krishna does the same thing with Arjuna. He first talks about Karma, then he talks about Nishkam, he talks about Atmagyan, he talks about Astang Yoga, and only then he talks about Bhakti. And so he doesn't want us to think that Bhakti is that we take Bhakti for granted. And he doesn't want us to think that because Bhakti is easy, Bhakti is second class. Right. So after building this pyramid, this yoga ladder, when he puts bhakti at the top of the ladder, they have a better appreciation of the process. Right. And then he says, by the way, you don't even have to climb the ladder. Here's an elevator that will take you. So same thing Krishna is doing over here in the Bhagavatam. Also, and this is more from, does not directly answer your question, but in the second canto, there are 10 lakshanas of Mahapuran, right? And the lakshanas are that the Mahapuranas should speak about these 10 subjects, Atra Sarga Visarga, right? So, in order to establish Srimad Bhagavatam as a Mahapuran, both Parikshit Maharaj and Sukdev Goswami are cooperating in creating an understanding of these 10 subjects.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for the class. Like there is a lot of glorification of the sixth canto is described so far. You are explaining that sixth canto is giving the hope about devotional service. To me, it was appearing so far, I was hearing 5 cantos. Everywhere I am seeing Bhakti only. So, in what way sixth canto is unique in its position? And because at one point I was thinking, as you are explaining, the uniqueness of sixth canto is that the like the reason why Bhakti Vaibhava course is scheduled for 6 cantos only. But again, I'm confused because every canto has its own uniqueness and its own beauty. So why the organization, the teachers kept 6 cantos only for Bhakti Vaibhav? And also, am I missing something from the flow perspective? First canto, second canto, up to reaching the sixth. What should I see on a high level bird's eye view and to learn?
So, I think the division of the Bhagavatam in 6 cantos, my understanding is I haven't like questioned it one way or the other, but my understanding is it's just in the sense the volume of the Bhagavatam. There are 12 cantos, 18,000 verses. The first 6 cantos are little less than half the verses there. So the understanding is that it's that which is within the realm of being. You can do it. Earlier on, Bhakti Vaibhava was only offered in face-to-face. It was supposed to be done in 6 months' time. So there was that consideration also. The consideration that the other 6 cantos require a higher level of understanding may or may not be true. Right? The other 6 cantos do definitely speak more about the sweetness of bhakti. Right? And Prabhupada does talk about going chronologically through it. So there's some implicit understanding that the 7th canto builds on the first 6 cantos and so on. Right? So there's some that implicit understanding. What you will, well, we won't see it because we end in the 6th canto, but the second half of the Bhagavatam is not as philosophically dense as the first 6 cantos. So the whole 90 chapters in the 10th canto, they're pure nectar. They're just pastimes there, right? You have Gajendra Moksha, you have the descent of the Ganges. So they're all these very nice pastimes. Of course, they all have philosophical basis to it, like pastimes of Narsingadev, etc. First 6 cantos are very dry, very philosophically dense, right? Especially if you're going to 2nd and 3rd canto. They have a lot of dry philosophy there. But I think that gets us ready to appreciate the sweeter aspects of the of the Bhagavata. In terms of the sixth canto being special from the perspective of Bhakti, so you are right that all the 10 subjects of the Bhagavatam are spoken in all the cantos. So it's not that Sukadeva Goswami was completely withholding the aspects of Bhakti. It is appearing right from the first canto. How does Krishna first appear in the Bhagavata? Yes, riding the chariot of Arjuna when he is chasing Ashwathama. And the acharyas, they speak. Bhagavatam starts with Krishna in his most humble mood, being a charioteer to his devotee, right? Then protection of Parikshit Maharaj with Uttara, the whole interaction of Krishna with the devotees, the recollection between Maitreya. We see a glimpse of the 10th canto and the 3rd canto, right? In the conversation between Uddhav and Vidur, that we see a glimpse of the 10th high-level summation of the 10th canto and the 3rd canto. So Bhakti does keep appearing. And it's not that in the subsequent 6th canto there is only Bhakti. No, the other subjects will also appear, but the focus is now going to be more of the relationship between Krishna and his devotees. The focus earlier on was the relationship between Krishna and his energies. Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, that was the focus there. But yes, wherever there is Krishna, there is Bhakti. It is inevitable. So you can't distill the two away.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay, good. Okay, so we'll do one more verse. That's also a logical break point, right? And then after that, Parikshit Maharaj resumes his questioning. So verse 8. Tasmat Purevas. Let me get the meter right. Tasmat Purevasva iha papanishkatau yate tamrityo avipadyatmana doshasya drishva gurulagavam yatha Bishak Chikatseta Rojam Nidanvita. Therefore, before one's next death comes, as long as one's body is strong enough, one should quickly adopt the process of atonement according to Shastra. Otherwise, one's time will be lost and the reactions to his sins will increase. As an expert physician diagnoses and treats a disease according to its gravity, one should undergo atonement according to the severity of one's sins. So this is the second verse in which Sukadeva Goswami is recommending the process of atonement for past sinful activities. Right? So he said atonement has to be performed for sins that have been committed by body, mind, and words. And here he says that, and the point that he makes over there is, the atonement should be performed according to the scriptural injunctions. So implicitly he is rejecting the whole concept of performing atonements just based on one's mental speculation. We especially see that a lot in India. We see that in other religions also, that people perform atonement according to their own mental conception. If somebody will say that on Thursdays I do this so that this will happen, and I don't do this on this day so that this will happen. I fast on this day. Now, I don't know enough about the Shastras to know whether they're bona fide or not, but the strong recommendation is that atonement is like if you have created a knot with a thread, you can't just pull the thread apart and expect the knot to open. In many cases, it will make the knot even worse. So you have to very carefully tease the knot apart. Look at each and every thread, pull it across, and then the knot opens. So that is atonement according to the scriptural injunctions. The very, very specific ways are given to atone according to the nature of the sin. And here, Sukadeva Goswami adds about the second aspect, that you should do it as quickly as possible. Because sinful activities are like money in the bank, or rather are like loans. The longer you have them, the greater the interest is. We see that in the mood of Parikshit Maharaj, right? When he comes to his senses and he realizes that he has offended a Brahmana, then he says that may whatever be the reaction to my sins happen quickly and right away. Because he knows that the longer it is delayed, the more severe the reaction will be. So here Sukadeva Goswami is making the same point, that do it as quickly as possible before it doubles or triples because of the interest. And also, while the body is strong and one has not died. So two aspects, because death will erase your memories. So when you take the next birth, you don't remember the sins that you have done in your previous life. But in this birth, you remember the sins. So better to atone for the sins in this life, because you'll forget about them in the next life. Now, they will be there as impressions, but not as explicit memories. And while the body is strong, point is saying is that do not have that mentality that when I'm old and I'm about to die, I will do my atonement. So let me do all the sins that I can, and then later on I will atone. Because then the body will not support your performance of atonement. So Prabhupada writes that the Dharma Shastra, like Manu Samhita, prescribes that a man who has committed murder should be hanged and his own life sacrificed in atonement. So Prabhupada gives an example of how the Vedic system of justice aligned with this process of atonement. And how the king was serving his praja by expunging the reactions to their sins as quickly as possible. So Prabhupada gives the example that if a man has committed a murder and the king says, I'm very compassionate to you, don't worry, you can live. So what happens to that man? That the sin of killing will accrue and the suffering will increase. Whereas if the king punishes him, then that sin has expunged. So he is able to start on a relatively fresh page, does not have to suffer the more severe form of suffering in the hellish planets. And the king also gets pious activities because he's helping another person. So there's this whole aspect of, like we talked about, how compassion should not be superficial but deep. So there is the whole concept of real compassion. So in the next set of verses, we will see that Parikshit Maharaj will display his two kinds of understanding of what Sukadeva Goswami has spoken so far. Right, so he will speak about, so like when we do Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, right now we don't have, but earlier on we used to have two kinds of exam, a closed book exam and an open book exam. So the closed book exam was essentially testing our memorizing, how much did we memorize? And the open book exam would basically test our understanding, that how well can we analyze it. So Parikshit Maharaj is going to demonstrate both aspects. That not only does he remember, but he also understands and is able to analyze. That will come in the next set of verses. Okay, so we will end over here. Prem Kishore Prabhu, when will we meet next?
So I'm already in India right now. Next Friday, Yatra starts. I don't know the travel plan for everyone. The Yatra ends on 23rd, 22nd actually. So when we reach, I will be reaching on Monday. I don't know about others. I heard Sarang Prabhu is reaching on 24th, Tuesday. So if you want to keep 26th Thursday, as we missed the 23rd, and we can go for a couple of weeks, we can continue for 2
Okay,
days.
okay. So if you can send out in the WhatsApp also, that we'll meet next on 26th of September.
26th, we can.
Okay. Panchakalpatarubhyascha कृपा सिन्धुभ्यः च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, शिला प्रभुपाद की जय, जय गौर प्रेमानंद। Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.